Recently, I saw an episode of Stinging Back, the podcast that mirrors a lot of what we do on this channel and talks very deliberately and directly in areas that we don't always get to. And most recently, they covered the chats that police actually have put together in order to entrap people. And, of course, we get considerable pushback from trolls all the way around saying, how could you be entrapped? Entrapment has certain elements to it. And I've pointed out before that we're not always talking about the legal definition of entrapment. What we're talking about is police going out of their way to create in people a fear that there are predators behind every bush and in every area or corner of the internet, when in fact you just have people who are, exercising their rights, exercising their libido. And I'm hesitating because, personal and secret does not necessarily mean illegal. So when people go on dating sites and they're looking for adults, and or they go onto a site and they don't make a big declaration that they're looking for adults, you can assume that they are in fact looking for adults. Why? Because they're on a dating site. Just like if you see somebody in a grocery store or hardware store, you assume that they're looking for that which is in those stores. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? But you'll get responses of all sorts that the trolls will have. Well, I hope that people will watch this episode, because one of the things that you will learn is what we've said here and elsewhere. You get glimpses into what police training is about. And I want to highlight a few things just from memory of what was on this site. So you will get, first of all, the police will approach you in most cases. Now, there's nothing wrong with being approached if you are doing the approaching. If the police are approaching you, you have to ask, was there any investigation? Why are they approaching you? They really don't have any standing to approach you. There's no probable cause, there's no investigation, nothing as of this moment with the vast majority of their proactive stings. And they admit they're proactive stings, so there's no investigation going on. They're proactive trolling expeditions. So then the police will start saying that they're an adult and that they're looking for fun. At some point, because you think you've been talking to an adult, and they start weaving it in to conversation about kinky things, about role play and things of that sort. And that sets the perfect stage for them saying, I'm 12 or I'm 15 or whatever, because now you don't know. Are we still talking about role play? What are we talking about? Now, at this point, the clever trolls will say, no, you disengage immediately. But it's a role play forum. If you were in the middle of having sex with somebody and you agreed on a safe word, fine. But suppose they continued on with it and you assumed, for example, that they were still playing along, but then they had you arrested for raping them. What would you think about that? It's a very similar situation here where the context matters. And the police are happy to wade into that area because they know full well that by wading into that little area, they are positioning themselves to spring the trap when you are least aware of it. At some point after talking, they'll bring this up a couple of times, and you might say, well, I'm not interested, or, oh, come on, yeah, whatever. Or as they've done in the Stinging Back episode, they talk about, what are you going to bring? And they'll ask over and over and over again, and they always ask you to bring something, okay? I won't tell you exactly how I know this, but many, many times I have been witness to this sort of thing, okay, where they ask you to bring something. And the reason they ask you to bring something is they want to make sure that you are going to bring the evidence that they will use to condemn you for the rest of your life. So that's very, very common. They'll ask you to bring something, okay? In my case, that's not what they did, however, but they will ask to meet, and they will try to do everything they can to get you to meet. I said many times I wasn't interested, and when I finally agreed to meet, it had nothing to do with sex. Sex was never brought up. But again, as I pointed out, that doesn't matter. So remember, the fake persona, they start out as an adult, they switch it to a child, Then they say odd things. For example, they'll say things as the child, "You're scaring me, you're surprising me, you're threatening me, you're weirding me out," is a very common one. And of course, it'll be completely off the wall, it'll be out of context, it'll have no sense of anything. But their idea is they want to say that they are a young person and they're now suddenly turning the tables from being the aggressor to being the victim. Okay? And police, of course, will use that. If you continue to persist in what you think is a role play, they will continue to use that and say, "No, you were told." See, we told the person the age. Oddly enough, I don't know why, but it never seems to come up. They start out as an adult. They started talking in a particular way. Then they abruptly switched it after they talked about role playing and, whether it be BDSM or where it be, role play of an adult and a young person. Then suddenly they introduce this element to the mix, which is extremely devious. Now remember, contrast that with what police officially say. We just go on there and sit like this and wait for something to happen, which is, of course, a lie. That's not what they do. Okay? And you have to ask yourself, because the trolls never ask this question, what are you doing there? I suspect the trolls and the vigilantes don't ask this question because they themselves love the deception. The trolls love it because they fancy that they're so very clever, as Dunning-Kruger effect specimens actually, that they're very clever and that they never fall for any of this. These are the same people who will probably deny they ever fall for practical jokes. Then you have the vigilantes who often, and sometimes working with police, but often will use the same deceptive tactics. So they're all in on that because they justify it by, you took the bait at some point and therefore we're justified in anything that happens after that. The problem, of course, is that if you had just left the person alone and you had not played these games, they might have met somebody, they might have had their little kinky role play games, whatever, and nobody would have been harmed. And that's really the point, isn't it? They're infringing on people's liberties needlessly in an area of life that they know is very sensitive, very vulnerable, and that people don't want exposed to the public eye. It's a devious psychological game, and they have no business continuing to get away with it.